The unlikely ambassadors. The human diplomatic vessel Harmony drifted toward Nexus Prime like a minnow approaching a whale. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation deck window, watching the massive space station grow larger with each passing moment. Even from a distance of 50,000 kilometers, the alien structure dominated their entire field of view. "First time seeing something that big, Captain?" asked Dr. Marcus Webb, joining her at the window. The elderly engineer's weathered hands gripped his coffee mug tightly, steam rising in gentle spirals. "Nothing even close," Sarah replied, shaking her head in wonder. The entire International Space Station could fit in one of those docking bays. Nexus Prime was a marvel of galactic engineering. The station stretched across nearly 200 kilometers of space, its crystalline spires and metallic rings rotating slowly in perfect harmony. Thousands of alien vessels of every conceivable design moved in and out of its numerous docking ports like busy insects around a hive. Some ships resembled organic creatures with flowing tentacles, others appeared as geometric constructs of pure energy, and still others looked like floating cities complete with gardens and waterfalls. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication station. "Bay 847, Lower Ring, Section 12. Sarah straightened her diplomatic uniform and took a deep breath. "Thank you, Lieutenant. All hands, prepare for docking. This is it, people. We're about to make history." The 12-person crew of the Harmony represented humanity's first official contact with the Galactic Empire. After months of intercepted transmissions and careful diplomatic overtures, the Empire had finally agreed to meet with representatives from Earth. Sarah still couldn't quite believe it was happening. As their small ship entered the docking bay, automated systems guided them to a berth that seemed absurdly large for their vessel. The Harmony, humanity's most advanced spacecraft, looked like a toy surrounded by the alien architecture. Through the bay's transparent barriers, Sarah could see dozens of other ships, each one magnificent and alien in its own way. "Artificial gravity is stable," reported Dr. Webb, checking his instruments. "Atmosphere is, well, it's breathable for us, but I'm reading 17 different gas mixtures. They've really thought of everything." The docking clamps engaged with a gentle thud, and Sarah felt her stomach flutter with nervous excitement. She gathered her team in the airlock, looking at each familiar face. There was Dr. Webb with his brilliant engineering mind, Commander Lisa Park, who served as their military advisor, Dr. James Foster, their xenobiologist, and 8 other carefully selected specialists. They were good people, but Sarah couldn't help wondering if they were enough. The airlock cycled through its sequence, and the outer doors opened to reveal a vast reception chamber. Sarah stepped forward first, her boots clicking against the polished floor, and immediately felt very, very small. The alien delegates waiting for them were giants. Ambassador Zixthera of the Saurian Republic stood nearly 4 meters tall, her scaled hide gleaming under the station's lights. Her reptilian features were noble and ancient, with golden eyes that held the wisdom of millennia. Beside her, High Counselor Veltar appeared as a shimmering mass of living crystal, his silicon-based form constantly shifting and refracting light into beautiful patterns. But it wasn't just their size that was intimidating. There were representatives from 47 different species present, each one more magnificent than the last. Floating jellyfish-like creatures pulsed with bioluminescent messages. Insectoid beings with multiple arms worked holographic displays with incredible speed. Energy beings flickered in and out of visible spectrum, their forms barely contained by specialized field generators. "Welcome, humans of Earth," boomed Ambassador Zixthera, her voice resonating through the chamber's translation system. "We have been curious to meet your species in person." Sarah stepped forward, feeling like a child addressing adults. "Thank you for this opportunity, Ambassador. I am Captain Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Government. We come in peace and friendship, hoping to learn from your great civilization." A ripple of something passed through the assembled aliens. Sarah couldn't tell if it was amusement, disappointment, or something else entirely. High Counselor Veltar's crystalline form pulsed with soft colors as he spoke. "Forgive our surprise, Captain Chen. Based on your species transmissions, we expected something rather different. Your entertainment broadcasts showed remarkable violence and conflict. Your news feed spoke of wars and weapons. We anticipated a warrior race, perhaps similar to the Vorthan battle clans or the Iron Legions of Kepler 7. Commander Park stepped forward, her military bearing evident. "Humans are capable warriors when necessary, Counselor, but we prefer diplomacy to conflict, cooperation to conquest." "Indeed," said Zixthera, tilting her massive head. "You are much smaller than we anticipated. And your technology." She gestured toward the harmony visible through the chamber's windows. "It appears quite primitive by our standards." Dr. Webb cleared his throat politely. "We're aware that our technology isn't as advanced as yours, Ambassador. That's actually one of the reasons we're here. We hope to learn, to grow, to contribute what we can to the galactic community." Another ripple passed through the alien assembly, and Sarah caught what sounded distinctly like chittering laughter from one of the insectoid delegates. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she kept her expression neutral. "Of course," Zixthera said smoothly. "Perhaps we should begin with a tour of our facilities. You may find our achievements educational." The next several hours were both wonderful and humbling. The aliens showed off technologies that seemed like magic to human eyes. Rooms that existed in folded space, machines that manipulated matter at the quantum level, gardens where plants from a dozen different worlds grew in perfect harmony under artificial suns. The scale of everything was overwhelming. But Sarah began to notice something as they walked through the station's corridors. Despite all their magnificent technology, the aliens seemed to lack something that humans took for granted. When they encountered a minor technical problem with a holographic display, 12 different specialists were called in to examine it from every possible angle. The solution, when it finally came, was elegant but took nearly an hour to implement. "Impressive efficiency," Dr. Webb murmured to Sarah during a quiet moment. "But they seem to overthink things, don't they?" Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red, and a translation system announced something that made her blood run cold. "All personnel to emergency stations. Ancient Defense Protocol has been activated. Repeat, Ancient Defense Protocol has been activated. This is not a drill." Zixthera's golden eyes widened in what could only be described as panic. "This should not be possible," she hissed. "The Nexus Prime's defense system has been dormant for over 1,000 years. What exactly does that mean?" Sarah asked, following the aliens as they rushed toward what appeared to be a command center. "It means," said High Counselor Veltar, his crystalline form flickering with agitated colors, "that unless we can deactivate the system within the next 6 hours, Nexus Prime's quantum torpedoes will fire on every ship in the system, including your vessel and ours. The station will then self-destruct to prevent contamination." The command center was chaos. Hundreds of aliens worked frantically at stations Sarah couldn't even begin to understand. Holographic displays showed incomprehensible data streams, and the air hummed with urgent communications in dozens of languages. "Status report," demanded Zixthera. A tall, four-armed alien turned from his console, his expression grim. "The ancient artificial intelligence that controls the defense system has awakened. It believes we are under attack from a species called the Harvest Lords who were destroyed millennia ago. All our attempts to communicate with it have failed. And overriding the system?" asked Veltar. "Impossible. The AI has locked us out of all critical functions. Even our most advanced quantum computers cannot break through its security protocols." Sarah watched the frantic activity around her, seeing the same pattern she'd noticed earlier. The aliens were approaching the problem with incredible sophistication, but they seemed locked into rigid thinking patterns. They were trying to use brute force computational power to solve what might be a much simpler problem. "Dr. Webb," she said quietly, "could you take a look at their data? Just observe. Don't interfere." Marcus nodded and approached one of the workstations. The alien operator, too focused on his work-to-object, barely noticed the human presence. Dr. Webb studied the scrolling data for several minutes, his weathered face creased in concentration. "Captain," he whispered, "I think I see the issue. The AI isn't malfunctioning at all. It's doing exactly what it was programmed to do. But the harvest lords it's looking for, I don't think they were a species at all." Sarah felt a spark of understanding. "What do you mean?" "Look at the energy signatures it's scanning for. Those aren't biological or even technological patterns. They're quantum fluctuations that match exactly what happens when a ship drops out of hyperspace. The AI was programmed to defend against any rapid influx of ships, regardless of their origin. So when our diplomatic fleet arrived along with all these other vessels for the meeting, we triggered the defense protocol," Dr. Webb finished. "The AI thinks we're the beginning of an invasion." Sarah looked around at the hundreds of brilliant alien minds working desperately to solve an impossible puzzle, and she realized something that would change everything. They were thinking too big, too complex, too advanced. Sometimes the simplest problems required the simplest solutions. "Ambassador Zixthera," she called out, stepping forward, "I believe we can help." The massive reptilian turned toward her, golden eyes reflecting both hope and skepticism. "Captain Chen, we appreciate the offer, but this is beyond your species' current capabilities. Our greatest minds are working on the problem." "That might be exactly the issue," Sarah said firmly. "Sometimes the best solution isn't the most sophisticated one." "Dr. Webb, explain what you found." As Marcus outlined his theory, Sarah watched the alien's expressions change from polite attention to genuine interest, and finally to something approaching amazement. These beings who could manipulate space and time had missed something a human engineer spotted in minutes. "Remarkable," breathed Veltar. "But if you are correct, how do we convince the AI that we are not invaders?" Sarah smiled, feeling more confident than she had since arriving at the station. "We don't convince it. We prove it. And we do it the human way." The plan she outlined was simple, elegant, and completely contrary to everything the Galactic Empire would normally attempt. But as the minutes ticked by toward their destruction, even the most skeptical aliens began to realize that maybe, just maybe, these small creatures from the third planet of an unremarkable star system might have something valuable to offer after all. The first part of humanity's introduction to the galactic community was about to become much more interesting than anyone had anticipated. The human solution. "You want to do what?" Ambassador Zixthera's voice carried a note of disbelief that transcended species barriers. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the assembled alien leaders, her small human form dwarfed by their imposing presence, but her voice steady and confident. "We're going to throw a party." The command center fell silent except for the ominous countdown timer showing 4 hours and 17 minutes until the station's destruction. High Counselor Veltar's crystalline form flickered with colors that the translation system interpreted as confusion and concern. "Captain Chen," he said carefully, "perhaps the stress of the situation has affected your reasoning. We are facing annihilation, not a social gathering." "No, listen," Sarah said, stepping closer to the main display, showing the eye's scan patterns. Dr. Webb figured out that the defense system is looking for signs of the ancient Harvest Lord's invasion. It's scanning for rapid ship arrivals, aggressive positioning, and unified command structures. Everything we're doing right now is making it more convinced we're the enemy. Dr. Webb moved to the console, his fingers dancing over alien interfaces with surprising skill. The AI expects invaders to behave in predictable patterns: mass formations, coordinated attacks, systematic resource extraction. But what if instead of looking like an invasion fleet, we looked like a celebration? Sarah finished. "The one thing invaders never do is throw a welcome party." Commander Park frowned. "Captain, with respect, this sounds incredibly risky. We're talking about tricking an eye that's lasted for thousands of years." "Not tricking," Sarah corrected. Communicating. This AI has been alone for millennia, watching for an enemy that was destroyed long ago. Maybe what it needs isn't to be overridden or shut down. Maybe it needs to understand that the universe has changed. A new voice joined the conversation, high and melodic. One of the floating jellyfish-like creatures had drifted closer, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing in complex rhythms. The translation system rendered its words as musical tones. The human speaks of communication rather than domination. This is unusual thinking among the younger species. Zixthera's golden eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Elder Lithara, you believe this plan has merit. I believe, the ancient being replied, its ethereal form shimmering, that we have exhausted conventional approaches. Perhaps it is time for unconventional wisdom. Sarah felt a surge of gratitude toward the alien elder, but there was no time to waste. We need every ship in the system to do something no invasion fleet would ever do. We need them to break formation, move in random patterns, and start broadcasting on every frequency they can manage. Broadcasting what? Asked the four-armed alien who had been working the console. Everything, Dr. Webb said, his excitement growing as he understood the plan. Music, art, poetry, stories, recipes, jokes, anything that shows cultural complexity and peaceful intent. Invaders don't share their family photos or debate philosophy while they're attacking. And the ships need to start sharing resources, Sarah added. Trade delegations, cultural exchanges, impromptu concerts between vessels. The AI will see patterns of cooperation instead of coordination for attack. High Counselor Viltar pulsed with rapid color changes. This is completely contrary to our security protocols. You're asking us to make ourselves vulnerable. Yes, Sarah said simply. That's exactly what I'm asking. Because sometimes showing vulnerability is the strongest thing you can do. The next hour was controlled chaos as Sarah's plans spread throughout the massive station. At first, many alien species resisted the idea. The proud Vorthan battle clans found it beneath their dignity to share combat songs with former enemies. The hyperlogical Siberian collective couldn't compute the tactical advantage of broadcasting mathematical poetry. But gradually, something beautiful began to happen. Dr. Foster worked with xenobiologists from a dozen species to create a living art installation in one of the station's main plazas. Commander Park found herself teaching human martial arts forms to curious alien warriors, who responded by demonstrating their own fighting dances. Even the most reserved species began to open up as they realized this wasn't just about survival, but about connection. The breakthrough came when Dr. Webb managed to establish a direct communication link with the ancient AI. Unlike the other species' attempts to command or convince it, the humans simply started talking to it like a person who had been alone for too long. Hello, Sarah said into the communication array. My name is Sarah Chen. I know you've been watching for the Harvest Lords for a very long time. You must be tired. The response came as a wave of confused energy patterns that took the translation system several seconds to process. Unknown entities, ship configurations do not match Harvest Lord patterns. Behavioral analysis inconclusive. That's because we're not the Harvest Lords, Sarah said gently. They're gone. They were destroyed a long time ago. You did your job perfectly. You protected this place. Task incomplete. Invasion protocols still active. Cannot cease vigilance. Dr. Webb leaned forward. What if we could show you what the galaxy looks like now? What if you could see that the Harvest Lords are truly gone, and that what you're seeing now is something they could never be? Evidence required. Sarah smiled. Look around you. Look at what's happening right now. Throughout the system, the most magnificent sight was unfolding. Hundreds of alien vessels had broken their rigid formations and were now dancing through space in patterns of pure joy. The warlike Saurian ships were broadcasting ancient poems about peace. The Siberian research vessels were sharing illogical but beautiful mathematical theorems. Energy beings were painting aurora displays across the hulls of crystal ships. And in the middle of it all, the tiny human vessel Harmony was serving as a communications hub, translating languages, sharing stories, and somehow bringing together species that had never spoken to each other before. The patterns, they are not consistent with invasion parameters. The AI's voice carried notes of wonder. Harvest lords created only uniformity, destruction, consumption. These entities create diversity, beauty, growth. That's right, Sarah said softly. We create. We don't consume. We build bridges instead of breaking things down. The harvest lords are gone, and in their place is something they never expected, something they couldn't destroy because they couldn't understand it. But the mission parameters can be updated, Dr. Webb interjected. You were created to protect this place from the harvest lords. Well, protection doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it means preservation. Sometimes it means making sure beautiful things can grow and flourish. The eye was quiet for long minutes, processing not just data but concepts that were entirely new to its ancient programming. When it spoke again, its voice carried a different quality, something almost like relief. Mission parameters. Updating. New primary directive. Preserve and protect galactic diversity. Threat assessment. Harvest Lord extinction confirmed. Current situation. Cultural exchange event in progress. Conclusion. Protection successful. The countdown timer stopped at 47 minutes remaining. Emergency lights shifted from red to soft blue, and throughout the station, gentle chimes announced the all clear. But the celebration that erupted wasn't just about avoiding destruction. Something fundamental had changed in the command center. Aliens who had looked at the humans with polite condescension now gazed at them with genuine respect and curiosity. Remarkable, breathed Elder Lithera. In all my cycles, I have never seen a problem solved through such inclusive thinking. How did you know it would work? Asked Zixthera, her massive form somehow seeming less intimidating than before. Sarah looked around at the diverse gathering of beings who had just shared the most unlikely bonding experience in galactic history. Because that's what humans do. We're not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but we're really good at bringing different things together and making them work. Your species appears to have a gift for lateral thinking, observed High Counselor Veltar. Perhaps our initial assessment was incomplete. All species have gifts, Sarah replied. That's what makes the galaxy interesting. You have technologies and knowledge that we can't even dream of yet, but maybe we have some things to offer too. Dr. Webb was still monitoring the eye systems, his face glowing with scientific excitement. Captain, you need to see this. The AI isn't just updating its mission parameters, it's learning. It's integrating everything that happened today into its understanding of how the galaxy works. Learning what? Sarah asked. That diversity isn't a threat to be managed, Marcus replied. It's a strength to be celebrated. This AI has become the galaxy's first artificial advocate for multiculturalism. Over the following days, as diplomatic relations were formally established and cultural exchanges began in earnest, the humans of Earth found themselves in an unexpected position. They weren't junior partners begging for acceptance into galactic civilization. They were valued contributors whose unique perspective had literally saved the day. The Vorthan battle clans requested human advisors to help them understand conflict resolution. The Siberian Collective wanted to study human intuition and creativity. Even the proud Saurian Republic admitted that human diplomatic methods might have applications they hadn't considered. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in the ancient eye itself. No longer content to simply guard against long-dead threats, it began to actively facilitate communication between species, helping to translate not just languages but cultural concepts. It became the galaxy's first artificial intelligence dedicated to building bridges rather than walls. As the Harmony prepared to depart Nexus Prime with a full diplomatic treaty and invitations to establish embassies throughout the galaxy, Sarah stood once more at the observation deck window. But this time, she wasn't looking at the massive alien station with wonder and intimidation. She was looking at it with the satisfaction of knowing that humans had found their place in the larger universe. "So what do you think, Captain?" asked Dr. Webb, joining her for what had become their tradition. Ready to go home and tell Earth they're part of a galactic community. Sarah smiled, watching alien ships of every conceivable design moving in the graceful, chaotic patterns they had taught them. I think we're ready to tell Earth that they're not just part of the galactic community. They're going to help shape it. And the aliens, they're going to learn what humans have always known. Sarah replied, "The best solutions come when different minds work together. When you combine strength and wisdom and creativity and curiosity, you don't just solve problems, you create possibilities." As the Harmony engaged its engines and began the long journey home, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humanity had come to the stars not as conquerors or supplicants, but as partners. They had proven that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't advanced technology or superior firepower. Sometimes it's just the simple human ability to see differences as opportunities rather than threats. The galaxy would never be quite the same, and neither would humanity.